Prologue and Chapters 1 through 3 of The Lepers of Molokai. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Lepers of Molokai by Charles Warren Stoddard. Prologue. The afternoon was waning in the tropical seaport. Already the heat was tempered and the glare softened by the humidity of the slowly approaching dusk. A little while and the sun would sink silently into the immeasurable abyss beyond the waves, and the brief, delicious twilight, bathed for a moment only in the splendor of the afterglow, would adorn itself with clusters of trembling stars. At such an hour, beguiled with reveries and soothed by the exquisite fragrance that exhales at dewfall, I was startled by a piercing cry that seemed the last agonizing protest of a riven heart. Not one voice only broke upon the stillness, but another, and another, and yet another, until a chorus of despair rang shrilly over the low-roofed cottages in the grove that stood between me and the not far distant shore. With no little emotion I hurried seaward, and speedily overtook a melancholy procession of weeping women, followed by a few silent people who were being conducted with decent haste toward the esplanade of Honolulu. The miserable beings, with the dazed look of lingering death in their fearful countenances, were soon disposed on the deck of a small outward bound craft, and then in a few moments that intervened between the casting off of the shore line and the sudden impulse of the little steamer as she swung about in midstream and made bravely for the mouth of the harbor, the pitiful wail of men, women, and children was renewed. Those grouped upon the extreme edge of the wharf were wringing their hands over the water, while rivers of tears coursed down their ashen cheeks. The others, upon the deck of the departing vessel, brooded for a time as in dumb agony, but anon an unearthly cry rang over the tranquil sea. It was their long farewell. The sun, just touching the horizon, seemed to pause for a moment, while the great deep burst into a sheet of flame. Tongues of fire darted and played among the wavelets as they tossed in the evening breeze, and the broad rays shot from cloud to cloud, painting them with glory and crowning the peaks of the beautiful island with red gold. Even the palm trees were gilded, and their plumes glistened as they swayed rhythmically to the low melody of the tide that ebbed beneath them. So faded that ill-starred bark, like a mote in the shimmering sea. A few moments only, and the splendor died away. The twilight glow of the tropics is as brief as it is intense, and the sudden coming of night drew a veil over a picture that, though frequent, is nevertheless painful to the least sympathetic observer. Darkness had come. The silence that came with it was broken only by the splash of ripples under the bow of some passing canoe, or the low moan of the water upon the distant reef. But the mourners were still crouching upon the edge of the deck, whence their eyes had caught the last glimpse of the fading forms of those whom they were never again to behold in the flesh. For those despairing but unresisting souls, swallowed up in the transfiguration of the sunset, were lepers. Snatched from the breast of sympathy and from the arms of love, doomed to the hopeless degradation of everlasting banishment, and borne in the night to that dim island whose melancholy shores are the sole refuge of these hostages to death. An island as solitary, as silent, as serene as dreamland. Mournful Molokai. Chapter 1. For 3 years and more I had been a resident of the Hawaiian or Sandwich Islands. 20 years before I had visited that little kingdom, and had again and again returned to it with the ardor of first love. The kingdom, which has been called the sweetest and the saddest in the world, has ever possessed for me the greatest interest, and I have learned to know and to appreciate the charmingly
Sample complete. Ready to continue?